Today we're going to teach you how to make your own badass sign. Stay tuned. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Now, because of all the adventuring and LARPing, I feel like it's been a while since we've had just a good old craft project. Though in preparing for that particular adventure, if you want to learn more about it, you can see it here. But in preparing for that, I realized that we needed a sign for outside of our camp. And I just had this vision of it being like one of those old tavern signs, like something you'd see outside the Prancing Pony or something. So I went ahead and I made this for the camp. That said, I didn't record any of it. We were like rushing to get out the door, and I just kind of wanted to put it together and see if I could in the first place while I was making something else. As a content creator, it was real dumb. But once I was done, I realized that I loved not only how it came out, but the process. So that's what I'm gonna show you here today. So if you're ready, let's jump right into it and level up this skill. All right, so for starters, I thought it would be fun to have something that we could eventually like put maybe in the background here. So I decided to go for this design. Well, not this design. I kind of moved it around so it all fit on one piece of paper. I just went back in and cut it all out so I can arrange it however I'd like. Now, what initially I decided to be making this out of is out of this 1/4-inch piece of ply right here that I had as scrap. And though I do actually end up making it out of it now that I think of it, it isn't the best for the first technique I'm gonna show you. You'll see as we go. The technique works, it's just choosing your wood is important. Finally, I'm gonna mount all of this into this glue up piece of pine here that I bought from Home Depot. Looking at the size I have to work with, this is the general design that I decided to go for. Okay, so the type of sign we're going to be making is like, it's gonna be raised, right? So we're gonna cut out all those pieces, we're gonna mount it onto that board, so when you look at it, it looks kind of three-dimensional. Now, there are a few ways to go about this with some more fancy tools, but I really wanna make it so that any of you can do this at any point in time. So, I'm gonna teach you how to use this bad boy. This is a coping saw. This is a coping drink. It's been a week, let me tell you what. But the beautiful part about a coping saw is this wide area here. This wide space here makes it so that our blade can reach really deep into the wood, basically making it able to cut out good detail really far in. Now, the first method we're gonna use to actually get our image onto the wood is by using some of this carbon paper. Carbon paper is super useful and it's really cheap to get somewhere like Michael's or on Amazon. All I do is lay the carbon paper down, place my image over that, taping it into place so that it doesn't move around too much on me, and then I carefully trace out my image. Pro tip, whenever you're tracing something out, use like a pen or something. It just makes it a lot easier to see where you've gone rather than using like a stylus. With a pen, you actually see like the marks you've drawn, right? Anyways, after tracing all around the outside, when you fold it back, bam, check that out. Super clean. Okay, so now it's time to cut that sucker out. And I wanna start by showing you how to cut out the little diamond that's in the tree there. So if you have a space that's like in an island unto its own and you can't get to it from an edge, what you can do is actually drill a hole in it, which I didn't get footage of me drilling a hole, but I'm drilling a hole in it. And then I unscrew the handle of this coping saw, which loosens the blade. Doing that allows me to slip it out of its little keeper and then slip it through the hole that I drilled. Then I simply reattach the blade, tighten it up, and can start sawing. The teeth on this little sucker are really fine and great for detailed work. The trick is just to go slow and make sure you stay on your line. Once I'm done, I simply detach that blade again and slide the whole thing out. Okay, so another cool thing about a coping saw is the fact that you can actually change the blade angle on the fly. It has these little nuts right here that allow you to just kind of rotate the blade all the way around, 360. And this is great because as you're kind of cutting through things, as the angle changes and you get to a point where like this part would hit up against your board, all you do is you change the angles of the blade, and now that's no longer a problem. Now if I wanted to cut sideways, I can still be cutting like this, but it's going sideways. I just thought that was neat. It's a good little tool right here. And you can see here how using this, you're really able to follow all those curves, make some sharp turns, and get a whole bunch of detail into your cuts. But this is where your choice of wood becomes really important. So the problem with plywood is it is plywood. Just like multi-ply toilet paper. That just means there's a lot of different wood kind of stacked on top of each other and glued together. The problem with that is when you're cutting something this detailed with really fine points, some of those layers will actually just kind of chip out. It's hard to see in this one because my camera didn't want to focus on it, but the whole like middle of the top of that branch just completely fell out of this thing. And there's a bunch of little spots too where it just kind of broke off. It wasn't coming out very clean. Now, I was very tempted because I've shown you how to do it by hand. You just use a different kind of wood and you should be all right. So because I have a laser cutter, I just went ahead and cut it out, and I was gonna stop it right there and be like, you get the point. We're just gonna move on. But the sound of you angrily typing that you don't have a laser in the comments section, it genuinely keeps me up at night. It's like a nightmare. So I went out and I got some basswood. This is a super soft wood. It's great to use for model making. You can cut it with just a knife if you had to, and should be perfect for this application. Also, because it is extra and I really do only have like a weekend to get this stuff done, I decided to go with this image just because it's a lot less labor intensive than cutting out all of the separate letters. Finally, I decided this would be a good opportunity to test a different method of getting the image onto the wood. Namely, just using this repositionable glue here, which I lightly spray on the wood, give it a little bit of time to cure, and then stick my image actually right to the wood. Then, just like before, I drill a hole to get myself started, and use my coping saw to follow along my lines, being super careful so that it doesn't like start following a grain some way I didn't want it to go. Quick tip, by the way, if you have to make a sharp, like 90-degree angle, you can see what I did here. I actually cut past it, which gives me just enough kind of turning room to do like a 3-point turn in that sucker, and have the blade facing the right way so that I can continue on. Then it's just a matter of cutting away. This is super easy, any of you can do it, and most of you guys have been training to do this since you were 13. That's right. I went there. And in relatively short order, this sucker just popped right out. And by relatively short order, I mean you do really want to go slow with this. You want to be careful not only to stay within your lines, but because all of my little branches and stuff were so sharp, if I wasn't holding them down and going kind of slowly, I ran the risk of like breaking them, right? Actually, with that in mind, after I peeled off the layer of the picture here, it turned out I did break it at its thinnest point right here. But I don't want you to worry about stuff like that because wood is actually really forgiving. You can just go ahead and glue it back together and act like none of that ever happened. You also have wood fillers and stuff. There's just a lot of different ways around it depending on how you're finishing it to make it still look good. With that all good to go, I just went ahead and sanded the surface to make sure all the glue is gone, and then used some rolled up sandpaper to get into all the little nooks and crannies on the side to try to smooth it out as much as possible. And check that out for being done by hand, which this is the first time I ever done it by hand. That looks really good. I even got the frame done pretty well. All right, so with that looking good, I just placed it all on more of the basswood, which will act as a base, and sprayed over the whole thing with some primer. I'm using a high build primer just because it'll help hide any inconsistencies or like cracks that I had. Just make sure that if you're spray painting indoors, it's well ventilated because you don't want to have all those harmful fumes, as opposed to those tasty, tasty fumes. That's right, I'm talking about today's sponsor, Fume. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device. I know that sounds weird, a flavored air device, but it does exactly that. It flavors the air. Instead of any kind of vapor, you're just getting natural, tasty air. They come with all of these different like flavor packs here. I've got quite the collection, each of which have these little flavor cores inside of them. And it's super easy to change out those cores whenever you want. Taking the old one out, sliding the new one in, and then sliding the whole assembly right back together. And I honestly kind of mill through a lot of them. Right now, I'm really on the orange vanilla. It's really, really tasty. But yeah, honestly, I carry this thing everywhere I go. It is super well made, and it is designed with people who like to like fiddle and fidget in mind. Make some satisfying sounds, and it comes with a magnetic stand that lets you like spin it and whatnot. Now, if you're interested in giving this a try too, you're in luck. For a limited time, you can use my code SKILLTREE to get this awesome free topper that they just came out with. This is the perfect accessory. You just slip it onto the mouthpiece for more of like a softer, warmer feel. And not only that, but it's like chewable. It's the like trifecta of fidgeting. I get to twist it, I get to spin it, and now I'm gonna get to chew it. So good. So again, that is tryfum.com, and use the code SKILLTREE or scan the QR code to get your free fume topper with your journey pack today. All right, so while my little handmade version is drying, I went ahead and lined up the laser version so I can mark out exactly how big it needs to be and cut the whole thing to shape. I even sanded these little notches in the corners here, which I thought looked pretty slick. Though note, I did leave that back plate just a little bit bigger than it needed to be. Just like with anything, if you start with it just being a little bit larger, you could either sand it or in my case, I'm gonna plane it to match up exactly, rather than like try to cut it exactly to size and have it end up being just a little too small. Happy with that, I just used a ruler to make sure everything was lined up perfectly, and then did the same thing, covering the whole thing with some primer. Now, there's a reason I'm doing it like this, because when I remove everything, I can see exactly where it goes. Not only is this gonna help me match up where everything's supposed to be and make sure it's still all lined up perfectly, but it's also gonna make my connection directly to the wood when I glue it. Since I am gonna paint this thing, if I paint over all of it and then I glue it down, I'm afraid that that connection is gonna be to the paint, and paint can rip right off of the wood. This way, the connection is gonna be a wood-to-wood connection, which is always gonna be more strong. Once the primer's dried, I added a pop of color to the whole thing by making the main points gold and then the lettering some silver. Now, when you're spray painting, there's always a possibility you're gonna get little bubbles in it, especially if you add it on a little thick. I found adding some heat to this pops those bubbles. I, of course, prefer to do this in the way that makes Maddie just the most nervous. It's one of those little pleasures in life. While those high points dry, I went back in and started painting the whole thing this nice teal color. All of the paints I'm using are outdoor safe in case I do want to hang these signs outside at any point. You'll notice I'm being a little bit messy with how I'm putting this paint on, in that I'm going over those lines. That's because when I put, like, let's say that tree image back in place, I don't want there to be any wood showing right around the edges. I'm afraid if I really follow those lines, you're gonna see just that little bit, and then I'll have to go back in with the brush and fix it. Inevitably, I'm gonna get some paint on the gold, then I gotta fix that, and then I'm gonna get some gold on the teal. You understand, right? Like, just by having that little bit of overlap, I don't have to deal with any of that. Cool, so with everything all painted up, we can finally stick this stuff together. Now, you can just use regular old wood glue, but again, just like with the paint, I don't want to deal with the wood glue getting onto the paint, and then that always discolors it a little bit. You see where I'm going. So instead, I'm actually going to use this super glue with an accelerator. This stuff is super cool. The accelerator makes it so that the super glue bonds like almost immediately. All I'm doing is applying the super glue evenly all along the back of what I want to stick into place, and then I go back over with the brush, spreading the accelerator where that super glue is going to meet. After that, I simply push it into place, and in less than 10 seconds, it is completely stuck on. I can't tell you how much joy this brings me. The fact that I'm always in a rush, and there is a glue that it just works. It works so fast. Obviously, you got to be really careful, because once it's down, it is down, but man, that looks great. Now, as I said, once everything is stuck into place, I'm gonna go back around those edges, just using my little block plane here to make them perfect. If you don't have a block plane or know how to use it, I really should do a video on a block plane at some point. But you can just kind of sand this down into place. Just be careful not to nick, your paint. Otherwise, you can just cut it exactly the size first, paint the whole damn thing, and then stick it together. Up to you, honestly. With that cut away, I painted over all of that exposed wood, not only to bring the whole look together, but again, to protect it in case I want to put it outside or somewhere with moisture. Finally, I hit the whole thing with a clear coat to help protect it. And oh my God, check out how cool this came out. I'm sorry, that's professional as hell. That looks so good. And even my little handmade one here. It's super clean, side by side. The laser, again, is still probably much more crisp, but that's pretty damn good. I really love this project. There is something, it's so simple. It might take a little bit of time, especially if you're cutting it by hand and you're being extra careful, but it's really just glue thing on thing and paint. But damn, it looks really, really good. I could see this, maybe I'll put little hooks in the top, right? Hanging almost like an old pub sign or something. That's really, really slick. And of course, use your imagination. You can use any kind of material. A lot of these things are done from plexiglass maybe, right? And you don't even have to cut something out. Maybe you just have it raised a little bit above the wood, put an image onto the plexiglass and have light behind it or something. There's just so many cool ways you can make a badass sign. I really, really love this project. And it's a great way to work on some basic wood crafting skills. Let me tell you what, you learn a lot about the grain of a wood as you're trying to painstakingly cut it out and just watching it want to snap in those little tiny delicate areas. It's a really good starter lesson. Anyways, if you like what I did here today, give me some of that like and love, and don't forget to subscribe because that really helps. Also, leave down in the comments section other cool ways you think you could make something similar. I think I'm on a bit of a sign kick. It's kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. And if you like projects like this, or really any kind of projects whatsoever, definitely consider joining our Discord. We have a community of some of the most creative people I've ever seen. Check out all of these cool projects. These are just ones that people on the Discord have been posting and sharing with each other. And in general, just have a great time. If you're interested in joining the conversation, check out the link in the description below. I hope to see you there, and in the meantime, keep leveling up, you. You've made it to the end screen. You've made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and this ship does not sail without them. It is because of them I'm able to afford the materials I need, any upgrades to our equipment, and enough coffee to give me the will to live. Special shout out to our newest high-tier Patreon member, Osbin Azarion. And an extra special shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, Froggy, Andrew Smith, Dragon Design, and Uri Sashiro. He always gives me hell for pronouncing it wrong. I genuinely have no idea how to pronounce it. Why don't y'all in the comment section tell me how to pronounce this? How would you pronounce this? Because I don't know, apparently. Now, if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can click on one of these videos here that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps a lot too. I now want to fulfill every man's dream of starting a pub. So we have the sign, we've begun the journey. I can hear everyone now. Let's go to the tree. The tree's a great place. Love the tree.